Milton Council Workshop for November 28th, 2023. We'll start this meeting by calling it to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hurst,
Present.
Mr. Dorman,
Here.
Ms. Kopp, Mr. Horn,
Here.
Ms. Metz, Mr. Tracy, and Ms. Gregory. Here.
All right, thank you. First on the agenda for tonight is the fuel bid. Manager Sherrod.
Yeah, that is actually Mr. Herron.
And he had just stepped out.
He just stepped out. How about we go on to the 2023 budget amendments, if
there he
Ms.
is.
Grace. There we go. Mr. Herron?
I forgot something.
That's all right, I wondered.
I found it.
We're ready,
sorry.
we're ready for you when you are.
Fuel bids?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, we did a fuel bid that'll be the next, 3 years, and so they bid each year incrementally. The company that is doing our current bid, that's hauling our fuel right now, they're from it's Co-Alliance, and they've been serving us with fuel since Wilson's went out, when Wilson's was doing it. So they did not get their bid in on time. And if you do a fuel bid, it tells you in about 4 places when it's due, where it's due, and what time. So I emailed them a couple days prior and said, are you guys submitting the bid? And they said, yes. Bid opening time comes, there's no bid. So they did submit, but it was a couple days late. R.D. Holder, who our local sales representative is Ty Ratliff. Ty's from West Milton. He was born here, lived here his whole life. He's selling for R.D. Holder. R.D. Holder was on time. So right now we're paying, the best way to explain it is we're paying 30 cents over wholesale for on-road diesel, off-road diesel, and unleaded gas. And then there's a winter blend additive for when the weather gets cold. So right now we're at 30 cents over in this current contract. R.D. Holder actually bid at 25 cents over, so we're going back a little bit, and the winter blend's only 5 cents instead of 10 cents. So they're gonna come in, have to replace all the tanks. I left Ty a message late last week, I think it was, so we can have it worked out, so we can get everything switched over before the 1st. They're responsible to provide the tanks and get everything wired. But I guess the only good news to that is that our current supplier was 30 to 35 cents over gallon. So it actually, I guess, they would have not gotten the contract anyway. I guess is what I'm trying to say, even if they were on time. So I think it's a pretty good deal for us. So I wanted to double check one number just to make sure. Yeah, so for this year, our current contractor actually would have been 40 cents over per gallon, 40 cents over 2025, and then 45 cents over wholesale for 2026. And R.D. Holder is at 25 cents, I believe, each year. Yeah, they held it to 25 cents over and 5 cents for winter blend. So I think that's best case scenario at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. All right, we're gonna postpone doing the water contract renewal
Till the
Lene
water
gets
director
here.
arrives.
And then, but next on the agenda will be the review of the 2023 budget amendments.
Ms. Grace?
Yes. So in your packet, you'll see this sheet here that looks like it says 2023 budget amendments. We went through all of these at the last workshop. I have highlighted the ones that have changed since then. There was some, I don't know if Ben wants to elaborate on this, but the park wall needed some erosion matting. Is that what that's
Yes.
called? So that added an extra 15 to that project. And then the North Miami Street water main, the number that's in there to reduce it, because we budgeted for a large part of it this year, That number could still change by the time we do the reading in December, because I'm still waiting on the November payout to be submitted, okay? So it more than likely is going to change at some point again. Once I know what that is, I'll send you guys an email, or I'll send it to Jeff and he can send it to you, either way. Also for the West Hayes water main, all of the engineering was supposed to be drawn this year. However, of the 80, and we've only spent 50, so I'm not quite sure when, if we're gonna be billed the rest of it by the end of the year. So that may be adjusted, so that may also change. And then the north end sanitary, I'm waiting for the final draw to come in. I've got the biggest part of the draw, but there's still a little bit left, I think, for the manhole covers. We're still waiting on that to be finished up and drawn out. So that could also change too. So as soon as I know all these last minute things, I'll be sure to let you know before the December meeting. So that's all I have on changes for the budget amendments. And do you want me to move on to the 2024 appropriation changes, or do you want to have any discussion on?
Does anyone have any questions about the 2023 budget amendments?
Yeah, I'd like to know a little more about the erosion matting. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess at what point did that become aware it was needed? And should that have been originally built into the estimate or the?
Good question. What happened was, phase one was always supposed to be part of phase two. Originally, the park wall and the ADA walk was all one project. And that's when it was actually coming in for a total project cost of around $90,000 about 2 years ago. Once we got into the hill itself and the walk, it turned out the walk was gonna be like 300-something thousand. And so that's when we backed off and said, all we're gonna be able to do is the hill right now. Well, part of the ADA walk was gonna be small retention walls as you went down the hill. When I got the updated engineer's estimate of 600,000, I thought it would probably be in our best interest to figure out another way to control the hillside for now and maybe forever. Because really what we need to do is we need to put a secondary wall. It's so high up, we need to put like a secondary wall, but until then, the only way to get the dirt to stay would be some erosion control. So that probably never gonna do phase two, so we put the matting down and we'll probably maybe the next year or so look at an additional wall.
It's a great answer, Ben.
Any other questions?
Do you think the walk eventually, the sidewalk, like the serpentine, will eventually happen, or will we feel like it was just too much?
I have hopes that maybe in the next couple years, not the concrete itself, but the project's costs will come down. I really think they will. So that, it would be awesome to see it. It's just that 600,000, it's just so expensive because of the way the grade is. It has to be someone that really knows what they're doing, and it's gonna be pretty intensive working on the hill. So that's kinda why it's so high. But I think once contractors maybe slow down, I can definitely see it being a possibility.
Yeah, I think it'll be good.
Yes,
Or just the average contractor in Kentucky or West Virginia,
exactly.
you know.
Yeah, they are used to that kind of stuff.
That's every sidewalk for them, right?
Exactly.
All right, any other questions? All right, Jill, if you'd like to go on to the,
Yeah, so you should also have a sheet in there for the amendments to the 2024 appropriations. We did the first read at the last meeting, and at that meeting, it was discussed that there were going to be some changes that occurred between then and now. This is basically a short list of what those changes were. The only thing that's on here that wasn't discussed at the meeting was we added 8,000 for codification of the ordinances. That was not in originally. We had 5 in the budget, but it ended up being closer to like 10 to 12,000.
Right. I was
So-
gonna bring that up later, but yeah, 10 to 12,000, and we can get the codification done at the beginning of next year. We've discussed it in the past. I believe, it's my understanding the council was in favor of moving forward, so we have a proposal to do that. I just want your approval, obviously.
yep. Yeah, it's something that definitely needs to be done.
Agreed.
All right, any questions about the 2024 appropriations ordinance?
One other comment, if I may, Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. you and I have discussed it, but I wanted to bring it up to the entire council, the issue of the second reading. As the law director explained to me, the law indicates that as long as it's not a substantial change, there have been some changes, but they amount to less than 1% of the budget. So the question is, in the council's opinion, is that a substantial change? If it is not, we can go ahead with a second reading as it was. If you consider it a substantial change, we'll have to call a special meeting because we'll have to start over again with the first reading. Yeah. So just need to know from you to accept a less than 1% as not substantial.
I don't think it's substantial.
Not me either.
Okay. Just want all on the same page if we go to do a second reading.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm new here. What does it mean? What does the codified ordinances mean?
What that means is the blue book that you were given that shows all the zoning and ordinances, okay? That doesn't have anything that's been passed in the last 8 years. So all those ordinances are not in the book. Codification simply means bringing it up to date. That had been an issue for a while. It came up most recently because I gave inaccurate information on the zoning of a property because I didn't have the new ordinance, wasn't in with the rest of the stuff. And so I was giving the wrong zoning classification. Now, that property got sold, and I'm not sure the realtor, hopefully she'll forgive me, but the point is, it's really important. They should be codified every 3 to 5 years. It's my understanding it's been at least 8 years since the village, and especially if you pass a number of ordinances. If you never change anything, there's not a lot to codify, but it doesn't cost as much either. So this is a little higher cost, but it's a longer time frame that they're going to codify. Does that make sense?
Total sense. Thank you.
I assume that would come with PDF copies to,
I'm sorry,
Searchable?
Do what?
is that gonna come with PDF versions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, well, we created our own PDF.
Right.
but now they'll actually give us a PDF.
Right, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
That's
Yes,
great.
That would, we're coming into
So it can be
the, what,
like
the
on the
20th
website.
century, maybe? I don't
But
know.
is our PDF version just PDFs of photos, like copied, or is it searchable, like
It is
text?
searchable, it is
Okay.
searchable, yeah.
'Cause
It's pretty good for what we've got.
That's the cat's meow right there, when you can type in one word.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It
no,
finds it all 57 times it's
it is-
listed.
It is searchable, and that is all due to the efforts of Ms. Hall. Megan did all the work and pulled that all together. But the codified version will give us a digital searchable PDF. So we'll be all caught up.
That's great.
All right, thanks. All right, next on the agenda will be the water contract renewal.
Thank you, Mayor. You all have a copy of the agreement. If you're not familiar, this is a contract that the village entered into 20 years ago to purchase water. It is a three-way agreement between the city of Troy, Miami County, and the village. The water is actually produced by Troy, but we actually buy it from the county because the county has negotiated a discount with Troy based on the volume of water that they purchase from Troy. And so if we buy it from the county, it's actually less than if we bought it from Troy, even if the county bumps it up 10% in addition to what Troy bumps it up. So every time Troy raises their prices or the county raises their rates, ours automatically go up. I have diligently searched since I've been your village manager for another option. I have not been able to identify a viable one. There's still maybe a possibility out there, but it's certainly not a viable option today. What I would ask is your permission to have the contract renewed. I'd like to work with the law director to at least propose to the county and the city of Troy, for example, that it's a 5-year renewal with some additional 5-year increments that are eligible, rather than a 20-year. This contract is somewhat vague on your ability to get out of it. So rather than lock us up for 20 years, and I don't know whether the county or the city of Troy would be interested in giving us anything less than a 20-year agreement. We really don't have a lot of negotiating position in this arrangement. But if you so desire to maintain this arrangement, I'd like to work with the county and the city to get it renewed. If we can get it at less than 20 years, great. If not, we probably have no choice. Any questions?
I like the idea of shorter contract than 20 years.
I will move forward. Lene and I will contact them I mean, I've already initiated, told them that we're interested in a renewal. I'll get back to them with some terms or potential language with Lene and see what we can get done before the end of the year.
I'd also like clarity on what disembarking from the agreement would mean or entail or take.
Agreed. Agreed. All right,
What does this one expire?
actually, the end of this year,
Okay.
December 31st of this year.
Are there other villages in Miami County or towns that do the same thing through the county?
There are not other incorporated areas. As I understand it, the county serves a fairly sizable area of unincorporated Miami County.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Next is the proposed sidewalk program.
This is something that's been discussed a little bit, I believe, in the past. The sidewalk program, as I've implemented it in other communities, is simply the village sets aside a sum of money, typically either 25 or 50,000, and then takes applications from property owners who wish to add sidewalk. It's all done on a reimbursable basis. First come, first serve. You don't try to get in the ballgame of saying, well, your application's more important. But the point is to get sidewalks installed right now where the village doesn't have them. And if their section of sidewalk is $10,000, they put it in, we inspect it, we reimburse them $5,000. Reimburse them 50% of the sidewalk. So it's a carrot to get people to put in sidewalks that haven't before. Now, there's another addendum to the program that I've seen used, and you can obviously do it as well if you're interested. If someone needs sidewalk replaced, either because it's falling apart or as there's a gap based on the trees, that is reimbursed at a 25% level, because they've already got sidewalk, and by code, they're legally required and responsible for replacing it themselves. And you could say, well, let's just make them do that, and we could. If you want to give a carrot to those folks, you can do so. But it's entirely up to you whether you included both sections of the program, and you could do it with 5,000 or 10,000 or really whatever amount you set aside. The point is, if you do it consistently for several years, you'll actually make a pretty good dent in the missing sidewalks. It's a pretty simple program. One-page application, you advertise it significantly, try to make sure everybody's aware of it, and then set a deadline of noon on whatever day sometime next year, and stamp them as they come in, and it's first come, first served until the money's gone, or it's committed. And again, you do it on a reimbursable basis. So you signed up for 10,000. Once your 10,000 is installed, we'll inspect it, and only then would you get your 5,000, half of it back. Does that make sense? Questions?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Please.
And these may be, at least one of them might be a Ben question. Let's say I have a sidewalk, but it's in poor shape. The village could say, hey, you have to fix that because it's unsafe or whatever else.
Right?
Do I have to fix it, or can I just take it out?
No, you have to fix it under the code.
Okay, so I think that's good, because we don't want to have fewer sidewalks.
Correct.
And then the other thing is just ballpark for a city-sized lot, what would it take to put a sidewalk in?
I should have, Ben, do you have any idea?
For how much?
Just, I don't know, a city.
An average,
city lot,
how much per
average
foot?
lot.
Or-
Some numbers, I can look that.
I mean, just off the top of your head, any clue?
Man, I don't know.
So that's,
I mean, we got some lots in this town that are
It's changed,
15
so-
feet and some that are 150 feet.
Let me just look at my notes.
Yeah, and I can bring you numbers at the regular council meeting in December. Obviously, you're not gonna make a decision on the program now, but we can get you some numbers per foot and some
Yeah.
averages at the December meeting, and I'll put it on the agenda. Of course, excuse me, if you do want to decide to implement it then, we can start putting it together. You're probably not going to want to take applications till spring. Again, you want to try to get the word out to as many people. Obviously, if you get a lot of applications, that indicates a strong desire to get more sidewalks, which is a good thing. I don't think, I don't believe any community where we've ever done it, we ever had money left over. Whether it was 25,000 or 50,000 or whatever, it was always used year after year after year. And so it's not intended to solve all the sidewalk issue. It doesn't stop you from going after folks who have an unmaintained, an unsafe sidewalk, I should say, and either didn't sign up or didn't get funded. You still have to fix it. And it's just a matter of, you know, whether you want to offer that carrot or not.
Yeah, I guess the reason I have the question for cost is if it, and just pick a kind of average size lot or whatever, if it's gonna cost $20,000 to put the sidewalk in, and we only put $20,000 in the fund, we're not really making much of a dent, you know what I mean? But if it only
Yes.
costs $5,000 to put a sidewalk in, and put $40,000 in the fund, we're gonna make a difference.
And you can obviously modify the program and say, well, we're not gonna do 50%, we'll do 20%. We'll do a smaller amount, and it's still a carrot, and you see how much interest it gets. A lot depends on how much the village wants to put into it, how much of a priority. I will say this, I think in all the other communities, they were not strong in enforcing the fact if you didn't maintain your sidewalks, you had to have them replaced. And so because they didn't make people do it, it was really important to have some carrots to encourage them to do it. If that makes sense.
Now, we have large portions of our town that aren't even, tell me if I'm wrong on this, Ben, but it doesn't make sense to put sidewalk in until we rework the gutter and curb and things like that, so,
And there's some without curb, yeah, I mean.
like up, was it Norris, right up through here?
Well, they have curb back there now, but like if you get to, I'm trying to think of a good example, Stillwater Street, do they have sidewalk all the way down?
And I think like Cedar and Bruce
No.
would
Yeah,
be,
Stillwater
That's
would
what I
be-
was gonna say.
Cedar and Bruce would
Yeah.
be, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know how you do that.
You can put in sidewalk without curb.
Yeah, I know, I think what he's saying is that, well, yeah, I mean, you can just put it in and then do the curb later. Or like Cedar, you could do like a
I mean,
monolithic,
does it make sense to do the curb? Sure.
yeah.
But I mean, that's, yeah, so, you can, we should modify the program so that it fits.
Yeah,
West
that's
Milton.
my point, is
Yes.
we wouldn't want to be offering to do it where it doesn't make sense, and people, like, there's a couple places back here that have sidewalks to nowhere. It's 1, 2 houses, then nothing, and then, you know, then,
I would discourage from ever using that terminology because it's just not connected yet.
Nice. There you go.
oh.
What's gonna put more pressure on your neighbors if you've got sidewalk and either side doesn't?
I agree with the idea of making the whole town more walkable,
I know you
absolutely.
do, I know you do.
I just think that to subsidize where it's not gonna be enforced and all connected, doesn't make sense, and us paying part of it where it doesn't make sense. And how we know the difference between where it does and doesn't depends on some of the long-term goals of our plats and neighborhoods.
Perhaps you can modify the scoring that priority is given where you're connecting to existing sidewalk.
There you go, that makes sense.
Would this be something that could be bid out so that you got like a
Oh, yeah,
better
we
rate?
would.
Okay.
Absolutely, we
Okay.
would bid it out so we can get a better price per foot. Now, they don't have to use our contractor, but absolutely, I would recommend that you do that, and that makes it easier to control the quality. But if they want to use their own contractor, they can, but they won't get reimbursed unless it passes our inspection. But absolutely, that brings down the price even more. If they know they're gonna have a minimum amount of, or a certain amount of sidewalk to pour in one project.
Yep. All right.
So, in a past life of mine, I did work and the city itself had like 3 contractors that would do work with like city grant money. So is that something we could do where it's like, here's your 3 choices? Because here's what I think, like I've got, like you've got a 15-foot sidewalk to replace. Like that's gonna cost me more to go out and find my own contractor to replace that small amount of concrete than if we've got a contractor that's got like the whole, that has the whole contract. Like, I feel like, and plus then if we had like one contractor, and I don't know, because they're using private money, if that's not an option, but like, I feel like, I don't know if, like, the homeowner would be working with Ben, or if the contractor would be working with Ben, or how that would work.
Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, what I would expect to happen is once we had a quantifiable amount of sidewalk that's gonna be poured and as participating in the program, we're gonna put out, ask for quotes from multiple concrete contractors. And whichever one gives us the best quote per square foot, then is gonna be our contractor that will offer to those homeowners. If they wanna use that contractor, they can. They wanna use their own, that's still their option. But we'll get a much better price per square foot based on them getting $50,000 or $100,000 worth of concrete work in one fell swoop. So that we'll work with them on the scheduling, so the contractor knows he can come in and do all of it in one day or a couple of days. And so, it doesn't preclude the other contractors from getting work if that's who the homeowners wanna hire. But that's how we can best assure to get the most money, bang for the buck of village money in pouring new concrete. That
Yeah,
sound right?
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Ben, do you remember when P Hill did it? Did they do the whole town or just state
They
route
did
40?
the state routes, and they got some funding for that, I know, through.
And they used one contractor to do it all, and I think they put it on people's homeowners'
I
taxes.
think they had
and
to,
then,
because of the way that the funding was set
Yeah.
up. I'm pretty sure they had to use one.
but if you talk to anybody that lives there, I think people were, in the end, probably originally upset with it, but in the end, I think happy that everybody's sidewalks were seamless throughout the, and that you got a consistent quality through, and I think they probably got a better
Oh, I'm sure.
price because it kept that contractor busy for an allotted time. Once you
Yeah.
got your equipment there, your crew there,
Yep.
Sure.
you get cost savings by continuation. Kind of like same way when a guy comes to your door to trim your trees because he's at your neighbor's house. He's already brought 6 guys there, 2 trucks and a stump grinder. He's gonna get you a good deal. I mean,
I'll
So-
put together some details of a program, just leaving out how much, if any, the council wishes to budget for the program and put it on the agenda for the December meeting, or do you want to wait till January? Okay, if I have it ready, we'll do it on December. If not, we'll do it in January. We'll get it done well before concrete season next spring. How about that?
Sounds good.
Is that all right?
I have another question.
Sure.
This is one of my big things, is the sidewalks, so I have questions. Are we gonna look into state funding for this also? Because I am pretty sure that at one point there was like state funding that will like help us, like offset the cost for the village.
If you're aware of state funding, I would welcome your help. I'm not aware
Okay.
of any state program for sidewalks.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it's not out there, I'm just not familiar with it. And choice one is normally pretty good about finding those things, but if you know something we don't, we'll take your help.
Okay, I'm not sure, but I'll look, because I think
Okay.
I've got some information.
Absolutely.
Question on the same page, sort of kind of when Dan mentioned tree trimmers and stump grinders, and I've wondered about this in the past. Has there ever been a program or anything you're aware of where we do kind of offer it to the village and it's like, hey, in May, let's say, we have a contract for this tree trimming company or stump grinding that is gonna offer residents a lower rate, that you can call and schedule just for those people that have dead trees and big old stumps that are unsightly, that they haven't done anything with, that maybe we're like, oh, hey, if they're gonna be in town all month, then I could get my trees trimmed or cut down or stumps out.
I don't have any experience with those two areas in other municipalities, but that doesn't mean you couldn't do it. Mr. Herron, are you aware of any time the village has done anything like that?
We haven't, but I mean,
Doesn't mean we couldn't.
Yeah, I mean-
let's, you know, perhaps the law director is aware of something that we're not off the top of our heads, but,
I just didn't know, it's like the sidewalks, like you've maybe always thought about doing it, but you just never did until you have something that's like, oh, hey, there's a program where we could get it cheaper, like you have these streets that need cut down or are dead, and you're like, I've just never called, but now that you're offering that to me, you know, I feel sometimes I'm lazy about that stuff, but if I get, it's like, hey, this program's happening, I'm like, oh, actually, I guess I should do it.
I don't remember the ins and outs of it, but Tip City had when I lived there before, briefly, when I got out of the service, so say that. They had a tree board, and within so close to the sidewalk or the street, to place a tree or remove a tree had to go to the tree board. But I do remember the tree board would meet, approve it, disapprove it, but I also think they would plant trees and they would remove trees. Especially problematic trees that have been hit by lightning or just past their years, or they're damaging sidewalk and curb. And that way there was a mechanism to get some of that stuff dealt with that, you know, sometimes homeowners couldn't afford. I don't know any of the ins and outs of it. We just happened to have a tree hit by lightning and had to deal with it all. But I think there's some grant money out there for tree placing. I don't know about removal.
probably is, and I'm somewhat familiar with the Tree City program. What you're describing, was that at the homeowner's expense or the city's expense of removing the tree?
I think there was, I think generally it was assumed the homeowner would, but I think in situations where it couldn't be, I think
Okay.
there was assistance available.
Okay.
And I do believe, like, again, it was a tree board, so they probably had a budget and
If-
decision-making, and I don't know we need anything that complex here.
How
And
about
just-
this? I'll suggest that if the council is interested, let's try the sidewalk project first, program, and if it works, we can try to replicate it after that in other areas. Would that be all right?
Yep.
Sounds good.
All right, any other questions? The rental registration program.
This has been discussed in the past briefly, in some conversations, in the meetings after the meeting, so to speak. At least a couple of elected officials mentioned an interest in some type of rental registration. I'm aware at least 3 other municipalities in Miami County are in the process of considering and/or adopting some type of rental registration. So it's a fairly simple process. In general, the landlords of rental properties pay a fee to register each rental property with the village. They're required to keep, they have to have their name and contact information, and they have to agree to update the village when their renters change. And so we always have the current renter. And then in some programs, the properties are inspected initially to confirm that they meet code, that they're safe to live in. In other, they're not inspected until there's a complaint, and there is an inspection fee. I will tell you that in the communities where I've worked on this type of program, it will garner opposition from most of the landlords who don't want to have to register their property and don't want necessarily people to know how many properties they own or rent out and so forth. There is value in the village having that data, that we now know where the rentals are and we know who owns them. It is a value to the village to know that the rentals are safe, that they're up to code. It's interesting, we inspect brand new houses to make sure they're built to code. And we expect owners to take responsibility because they own it, but renters are at the mercy of their landlord. And if they're not maintained properly, sometimes they become unsafe. I would argue that it's in the interest of the village as a whole to have safe housing for its residents. So a rental registration program is one of those. I put in your packet a copy of what Covington posted. They're still in the process of considering a rental registration, and a 2 or 3 page blurb on the advantages of a rental registration program. Lynette, are you familiar with any of the programs we have already in Miami County by chance?
I'm not familiar with them. I know that they're there, though.
Right.
I know that a lot more people are doing the rental registrations.
Right. I meet with the county economic and community developers on a fairly regular basis, and so it's been a topic of conversation on and off for about a year. So I know Covington is considering it. It may take a step, it may be put on pause as, if you're not aware, Mr. Hinkleman has resigned as the village administrator in Covington. He's going to go to work for the city of Piqua as a planner, so, which was his profession before he went to work in Covington. So if you're interested, I'd be happy to talk about it more, get more involved. I would recommend it, but I also want to make sure you as the elected officials have a good sense of what you'd be getting into politically if you decide to move in that direction. You will get pushback. Questions?
I know when we first talked about it, you know, how things hit you first. At first, I wasn't in favor of it, the
Okay.
thought of it. It just, the way it hit me, I was just always, you know, government overreach I don't like in any way. And so that's how it first, and then over the last, I don't know, 9 months since it's been brought up first, or a year, however long it's been,
Right.
there have been several times when I've thought about issues and things that made me realize that it would be beneficial in some cases.
Okay.
There are rental properties that have, you know, code issues that aren't necessarily the issue of the person renting.
Right.
And so having the information of who actually, you know, and I know you can look up the owners and all that kind of stuff, but having those things situated, knowing you're dealing with the renter who answers the door rather than the person who owns the property, those kinds of things, and I'm sure there are some others.
There are.
So I've gone from there to hanging out in the middle,
Okay.
to hear more information about it, because, you know, thinking about the inspections and things of that nature, I get why. But you know what, if I own a house and I want to rent it to my brother-in-law, you know, for a year because, whatever, you know,
Right.
I would not want to do that whatsoever. That would not sit well with me, you know. But on the other hand, if you have somebody that owns 10 properties all across, that's a different story. So,
Right.
like with everything, anything we enact, it hits everybody a little differently, so.
And again, you can tailor the program, and this is just off the top of my head, you could say if you're a landlord with only one property, you don't have to register.
Mhm.
You can modify it. I would argue it makes sense, but bet you there's very few landlords who only have one property.
Yeah,
That's gonna exclude a very small number. Okay, it's still a small number, maybe a number on my
Represented at the
council.
table.
there you go.
That's fine.
Right,
My point is, and also, I would suggest to you that if you pursue a program, and after you've initiated it, a year later, you're gonna wanna make changes.
right.
And you'll either tighten it in some areas or loosen it in others.
Yeah.
It is not, one of the most common criticisms that I've heard in other places is it's not a moneymaker for the village.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But somebody will claim, oh, you're just trying to,
Right.
you know, $25 or $50 or whatever the registration will go to pay an inspector
Right.
and keep the staff. There is value in knowing what percentage of our residential structures are owner occupied versus rental, and how it changes.
Right.
If you started today, 5 years from now, it would be important to know if the rentals have increased significantly or decreased.
I could also see that a program like this would keep away the bad apples of
Absolutely.
irresponsible rent, or, you know, landlords or whatever. So I do see some possible benefit in that.
Yeah.
Another question that comes to mind is, I also get it if I buy a property I want to rent, or if I have one, I want to change from a dwelling to a rental to get it inspected before the tenants move in, what do we do with all the ones that are already, you know, already dwelled in by renters? Are they still gonna have to be inspected? And then, you
I would
know,
say yes.
That's a big undertaking.
But one of the pieces then is the scheduling. And you're starting a program and you've got, I don't know, 300 properties that have to be inspected, you're not gonna knock those out in a week or two.
Oh, no, yeah.
So what you're gonna have to do is start scheduling and know that, and you'll probably, there's lots of different ways to do it, but the point is, some of the more stable, long-term rentals may have to wait 2 or 3 months before they get an inspection. You're also always
That's
going
an
to want to.
eternity for a property manager.
It is, but I don't know of a way to get around getting 300 inspections done by one inspector and doing it right.
I know, I'm just saying, somebody that's got 3 months at no rent collected on a.
No, he can collect rent.
On a unit flip for.
No, I'd let him move somebody
Okay.
in. No, it's not sitting empty.
Okay, cause I'm going that, you know.
No, that's.
$1,200 a month
No,
rental
no.
fee,
That-
3,600 bucks,
that would never work. But if the ones that are empty when you're starting, you can get those done first. And the ones that have had that same tenant for 5 years, that can wait a month or two.
So the only way for us to verify compliance with this, though, is to go through each property in West Milton and verify if they're
No.
properly participating or not? How would you
No.
know if people are?
When a new person comes in to put their name on the utilities.
Right.
We can be if you want to be really aggressive, there are ways to do it. I'm not suggesting a program nearly that aggressive, but that's up to you. What I'm saying is, you get the ones who, and you start out, say, for the first 6 months, it's $25 to register. But if you don't register in that first 6 months, it's now $100. Or you give them a carrot to get up and tell me now and not wait until later. So you do different things to encourage compliance sooner rather than later. It's not a perfect program. I don't have all the answers. But I have seen enough, I've had enough experience with it to firmly believe that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages if the elected officials can take the heat from the angry property owners who don't want to comply. Because that's a big jump from never having anybody check at my property and now inspecting it and going, what do you mean I've got to do this, this, and this within the next 30 days or you're going to make them move out? That's what you got to do. It's not safe to live there.
Are there
Up to you.
other ways to confirm? Because
Sure.
in the, like my brain immediately thinks of a loophole with the water system. Like that's, like, to me, that's a super easy one to get out of.
Landlords
there are
would add.
Well, because the
they
water
put a water
goes with like
service
the
fee.
owner of the property.
Yeah, they
So
just
like,
bills,
basically, I would
build it
just
in
be
the
like,
rent.
I'll pay your water bill, and then, because I mean,
No.
people don't own a lot of property that are not intelligent. They will, like, real estate investors are intelligent. They will find the loopholes. So they, like, are we gonna have to hire a full-time staff member for this?
No. I would expect to. I guess it depends on how we pursue it. What I would expect is to contract with an inspector so that he's working in multiple communities. And we schedule the inspections. Only if we had enough revenue generated from those registration fees and inspection fees that we could hire our own part-time inspector. But there's no way a village our size could handle a full-time, 40-hour-a-week, 5 days a week inspector. That doesn't make sense. So, and again, it would be a learning experience, but yeah, there's tax bills, there's the county GIS, there's a lot of ways. If we begin to suspect that a certain property is a rental and they've not registered, there's lots of ways to confirm it.
I think the program coincides with our code enforcement of what we've been focused on for the last few years.
It does.
I think it's another good way to assure those properties, like you said, are in compliance for the renters that are paying an outrageous amount of money to live in these places and deserve something really nice to live in for what they're paying for. I think in our parking lot meeting, there was some renters there with frustrations that didn't necessarily know, I think, to talk to their landlords, or maybe they don't hear from their landlords. So I definitely could see as a landlord, maybe, I don't know, not wanting to do it, not wanting to pay, and not wanting to have to, prove
Sure.
anything about my property, but I think the tenants deserve something nice to stay in, and with the code enforcement, I think it makes sense.
Okay. Continue to think about it. Please email me any questions. And depending on the feedback, I'll either put it on another workshop or drop it, whatever you prefer. All right?
All right, sounds good. Next on the agenda is old business.
Code enforcement. Chief, would you care to give the council an update on code enforcement, please?
Sure. So we're still actively working with code enforcement. We sent out over 90 letters in the last, since we've taken it over, we're about 90% compliance. We have several residents that we're working with on different projects. They're in various stages of either tearing down properties to rebuild, hiring contractors to tear down the properties, and things of that nature. We have several of those that we're working with that we've identified. And we have 3 actual in the in the court process that we've cited. So they're working their way through the court system that were non-compliance. And we have another one that probably at the end of this month will be in that situation. We were required to serve another 30-day notice to that property, and we have done so. So I'm certain that sometime toward the end of December, we're going to, not November, but December, we're going to be actually citing for multiple violations on another property that has, the owner has just flat out told us he's not going to address any of those. So.
Any questions? Should I go on?
Thank you, Chief.
On code enforcement, sorry.
Go ahead.
How many things have you guys come up against in code enforcement that you're dealing with a property that is a rental versus owner occupied?
Not a lot, to be honest with you. We've had a couple rentals where they have put some stuff out front that they shouldn't have because they don't get trash collection from us, and so we've had to contact at least one particular rental a couple times and let him know the actual landlord wasn't aware that his tenants had done that. He came down right away and picked them up and took care of the problem, so we never continued to have an issue there. So we haven't had a lot of rentals. We've had a few, but the majority of the people we've sent letters to were actual homeowners that own the property or the business property.
Is there a way we could just track that statistically, just to keep an idea of the
Sure.
code enforcement issues that are related to
Right.
rentals versus
Yeah, we
owner
could
occupied?
absolutely, we could do that.
Just add to the spreadsheet a box
Yeah.
that's whether it's owner occupied or rental.
That'd be awesome.
We'll add that to it. We use the county GIS is what we use through the county auditor site, which is pretty accurate. It's not 100% as far as property lines and all that, but it's about as
Yeah.
close as you're gonna get without actually.
You look at where the
surveying.
tax bill gets mailed to, and that kind of tells a
Right,
tale.
right. So those have been very accurate. We've not had any issues. We do have one property in particular that Lene, Ms. Brosh and I are working together. That we may end up having to destroy and tear down. It is an abandoned property that we've been mowing for the last few years, and we're working on that, but it's in the first phases of that.
That's an out-of-state owner, correct?
Yeah, that's an out-of-state owner. We're not close to probably doing that. That'll be a spring project if we get to that and we don't get compliance. So far, we've gotten 0 response from the owner. They have not contacted us, and we mowed the property all summer, and every year that we have mowed it, they have turned, the Public Works has turned in the notice to the finance director, who after your resolution files the notice on their taxes, and they paid them. So.
Okay, so after that, it requires them not paying that for us to be able to take.
No, there's many violations. All they're paying for is the mowing. So we have a lot of other violations. It's a home that's not habited, and needs to be torn down. It's in very, very poor condition.
It's a raccoon hotel.
Yeah, it's a raccoon hotel.
So,
Do we need to up our mowing, fee?
Pardon?
Do we need to up our mowing fee?
I don't know what we charge, to be honest with you. I don't
Pretty
handle that
expensive.
side of it.
We might want to take a look at all of those hourly rates and so forth.
In the end, if someone purchased the property and that's assessed on the back taxes, they have to pay that.
Sure.
So there's a possibility of decreasing the likelihood of somebody purchasing that if there's an undue burden, like we made it absurd, that it would be bought when that's on there. Because I believe when we had this situation before, we talked about that the city took ownership of it. Didn't we talk, Ben, about splitting the property in half, giving half to this neighbor and half to that neighbor, because the city wasn't
Which
in.
one is it?
Not this, he's talking
Oh,
about a
you're talking
different
about
one.
one big, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I would suggest in that instance, you'd have the CIC step in, or the land bank take ownership and then deal with redeveloping it.
it was a weird case.
I don't know if this is code enforcement, but it might be worth mentioning that for leaf collection, to make sure that, you know, everyone puts it on their curb lawn and then not in the gutters. I see a lot of it put into the gutters, and,
Yeah.
you know, these people are working a little harder than they actually have to get the, you know, the leaves to the gutter as opposed to just leaving it there on the curb lawn. And Ben, could you explain, I mean, once again, just why you wouldn't want to put those in the gutter?
Yeah, so basically you put a pile of leaves in the gutter, it's gonna block the stormwater. Therefore, it's not gonna get to the catch basin, or we've had some people actually put it over the catch basin. So, two, when that happens, and when it's below freezing, then not only are you gonna have water and leaves in the road, you're also gonna have ice. So that creates another hazard. So it just keeps the streets flowing, keeps the storm flowing, if we just keep them in the green space. Plus, they're not nearly as wet when we pick them up. Typically, they drain out into the grass a lot better than they do on a street. So, yeah.
All right, and when does leaf collection end this year?
December 1st.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had to look at my calendar.
Sorry.
On December the 1st, we'll start on the north end and work our way south once, and then that'll be it.
All right, thank you.
And if we do have a resident after that date that has leaves, we'll give them the bags, and if they'll bag them, we'll then come and pick up the bags.
All right, excellent, thank you.
I'm done with leaves.
Done with leaves. Should I go to the next item, Mayor?
Please, yeah.
Not on the agenda, there was a couple of items that are in your packet. There has recently been a very public municipal cybersecurity breach, so I thought it might be helpful to the mayor and council. I put a copy of our coverage under our municipal insurance policy, what all is covered. And they would be very proactive in assisting us should we have a breach. As you all are well aware, we just tightened up our security with the two-step authentication to get into the system, as I think most are aware. So we have taken some steps to increase our security. I do believe we have adequate insurance, but if someone who's more cyber savvy than me suggests we need to modify any of those amounts, please feel free to contact me. Any questions on our cybersecurity? The last item that I have, should have in your packet a copy of the project list that I've been working on for quite some time. It is not current, but it gives you a taste of the, how many total projects do I have on there now? Let's see. I should have turned to that page already. How many?
46.
46, thank you very much. And then someone made a good suggestion about creating a one-page project, kind of a cheat sheet, to kind of show more details about each individual project. So I've been working on putting those together. I've got some examples in your packet But I thought before I go ahead and complete all 46, I'll have you take a look at, and some of them, there is grant money involved, and so there's more detail. Others are just a concept that we haven't gotten to yet, and we know it's a project for next year or even the year after that. So it may only have a minimal amount of information. But I thought if you want to take that list, take a look at it. If there's additional information that you would like included on these so-called cheat sheets, just let me know, and then I'll complete them for all of the projects on my list, and also update the list, and we'll go from there. I'll try to keep them updated so you can have copies of kind of the basic on each of the projects. Does that make sense, I hope?
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions? It was a really good suggestion that a councilman gave me, so hopefully it's helpful to you.
I appreciate this.
Any questions? That is all I have, Mayor.
All right, so on to new business.
I think this is new business. We have the Christmas tree lighting on December 2nd, which is Saturday at 5:30. There's a parade, and there is hot chocolate and hot dogs, and Santa's gonna be there, and it's gonna be a fun time. If you've been in the past, it's always a good time. Oh, and
The carriage
carriage,
rides.
the carriage rides.
Carriage rides, absolutely.
That's important.
Those are
Yep.
very, very high in demand.
Yes.
All right. Are there any comments by citizens tonight? All right. Are there any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Any abstain? All right, ayes have it. Thanks a lot.